Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Agree with the Agripreneurs, inspiring entrepreneurial stories you should hear. So, this is our last episode. So, for first and foremost, I just want to thank all of our viewers for supporting us, for watching this series, and I hope that you learned a lot. So, for our last episode, we will talk about big dreams and how a cup of coffee can make it bigger. So let us welcome the founder of the Dream Coffee, Miss Larissa Joson.
Hi, Gino. Thank you so much for that very energetic introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here, and I'd like to thank the Agri Business students of UPLB for inviting me to talk to you guys. And I hope you get to pick up kahit lang a small nugget of wisdom from the things that we'll be talking about today.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Larissa. Miss Larissa, tell us about the Dream Coffee. I mean, what does it have to offer?
Thank you for that question, Gina. No, the Dream Coffee is essentially coffee. It's a coffee brand that I created with an indigenous tribe called the Tiboli. So the Tiboli, they're a tribe, and it's actually also the name of a municipality in South Cotabato. So sa Mindanao yon, and right now I work with 75 farmers in that area for their Arabica coffee. The reason why it's called the Dream Coffee is really because it's kind of an homage to the history and the culture of the Tiboli tribe. Kung familiar kayo sa mga indigenous tribes natin dito sa Pilipinas, they're actually known as dream weavers. Why? Because it's part of their culture to weave a sacred fabric called tinalak. And yung tinalak, traditionally, they only weave that when they see a pattern in their dreams. So, very intrinsic ang mga panaginip sa kanila as a tribe. And that's why we called it the Dream Coffee.
Oh, that is very interesting. I think that this coffee's goal is not only to become rich in taste, but also to become rich in culture. So, ayun, with all that being said, specifically, what makes a coffee a dream coffee? You know?
Well, one, I think we are the only brand that really shares Arabica coffee from the municipality of Tiboli. And another thing also is we work very hard to ensure that the coffee has what we call a dream-like taste. We have viewers who are familiar with how coffee is processed. It's a very sensitive fruit. That means that every part of the process, when it comes to coffee, it's very crucial and very important. So we made sure that the farmers that we work with, they follow GAP or good agricultural practices. And we also make sure that when you roast the coffee, it's roasted in such a way that it will really bring out the best flavor profile for what it currently has to offer. So what we do is we roast our coffee in small batches in a medium roast so that when it gets to the consumer, so it gets to you as fresh as possible. It's shade grown, it only grows in a particular origin and estate in Tiboli. We also ensure that we follow a honey process when it comes to post-processing the coffee and all of these things. So I think what makes it not really just unique, but what makes it special is we make sure na consistent kami in the processes that we do for this coffee.
That was a great introduction about the Dream Coffee. And with all that being said, how and when did this beautiful company of yours start? Who were the founders and what made them to initiate it?
Okay, so this actually started in 2017, and it was very informal how it began. It took us a while to get there. One, because we wanted to make sure that we could really work with the community there. I think one of the things that's very important in the Dream Coffee is we're really a community-driven brand. A lot of the things and a lot of the decisions we make, we always go back to the community that we're working with, to the farmers. We always ask ourselves, yung mga decisions na ginagawa ba namin, makakatulong sa kanila. And so in 2017, what happened was it was actually my father. He went to Tiboli. Actually, it was really just on vacation. Tapos, he ended up meeting some farmers, and then he realized na yung Arabica nila talagang hindi siya na ma-maximize. And so what he did was he talked to a small group of farmers to ask kung interesado ba talaga sila to really maximize their Arabica. One of the things also kasi with coffee, it's a high value crop. When processed well, mataas talaga ang bentahan niya. It was only in 2018 after we did, some taste tests and sorts with our family, with our friends, with a small group of people who supported the brand from the start, na we realized na, oh my gosh, may potential pala talaga to. So it was only in 2018, a year after, when we really just formally registered it with the SEC, and dun talaga siya formally na launch. That was in late 2018. So those are our humble beginnings. We're quite a small brand, but we really have big aspirations.
This is very interesting way to help them. It's because this does not only help them once, but this also helps them in the future. So and I also think that giving back to the farmers that help you is not only the smartest thing for your business, it is also the right thing to do. So how about you personally? What urged you to start this business?
Well, that's a good question. I think what really made the switch for me to pursuing it full time was when I visited the community and really spent time with the farmers and their families. Slept in their homes, met them, ate with them, hiked with them, traveled with them, and I just realized na parang, I don't know, something just changed in my heart and in my mind. Naisip ko lang na there's no turning back from here. Parang I was really changed by the experience of just being with them. And often, lagi lang ako bumabalik doon. When it gets difficult in managing a business, of course, there's always challenges. I always just go back to that community.
Thank you. Grabe, Miss Larissa. Very rare to find someone that aims to start a business to help the community, that help them to make their business successful. No, I was just about to ask about the vision and mission of the Dream Coffee.
Well, when it started, ang idea ko talaga was I wanted to take what we were doing across tribes, indigenous tribes across the Philippines. So now I think I really want this brand to be kind of like a culture bearer for the Tiboli, for indigenous tribes, and also for Filipino culture in general. I want Pinoys and foreigners who drink the Dream Coffee to realize na parang, oh, this is what Filipino coffee is, and it can have a great story. It can have amazing people behind it who really work hard to achieve the taste that it has. And someday I would really like to tie in agriculture and maybe tourism in the area. So Tiboli actually has a great ecotourism industry. In the future, I would love for people to travel there and recognize it as a known Philippine origin for coffee.
Well, I'm wishing you well on that aspect kasi I think na after this pandemic, it's hindi naman na malabong mangyari na ma-incorporate talaga in tourism, lalo na dahil rich talaga ang culture ng mga indigenous tribes. Not alone the Philippines itself pala is sobrang rich din ang culture. So we keep on mentioning the Tiboli and how you've helped them. So what are the other ways that you've helped the Tiboli? And can you please share to us how this organization of yours made the step-by-step process to achieve this kind of advocacy?
The other thing that we also worked on, aside from training when it comes to agriculture, is also training when it comes to bookkeeping, when it comes to sorting coffee. So all of these things that are down the value chain but are important for making and keeping a business sustainable. So we partnered with NGOs, and the NGOs would give the farmers the necessary trainings and seminars. So like Peace and Equity Foundation, ACDI VOCA, USAID, and another way that we try to help the farmers is I think it's very important na for any commodity, for any community of farmers na meron silang sure market for their crops. Kasi kung wala silang market, di ba, who will be purchasing? So because the green coffee ensures that they will have a market. Last year, we were able to broker arrangements and deals that help them get the hullers, the pulpers, drying beds, all of these things that make the labor of coffee a little easier. So because of, again, all the hard work that they put in, it's been recognized by NGOs. It became easier for them to be the recipient of these equipment. So another thing that we were also able to help them out with is organizing them. So you guys are familiar with like farmer associations and cooperatives. It's easier for farmers to be united in an organization because it helps them be on the receiving end much better, in a better position when it comes to receiving, for example, sponsored equipment or trainings or seminars. I believe that was in 2019 when they were able to organize, and we don't actually really want to take credit for them organizing, but we help them with it. All of these things na nagagawa namin, it's really credit to the farmers for deciding on their own na gusto din nila to gawin. Kasi kung ayaw naman nila to gawin, mahirap sila pilitin. Siguro na-pass on din yung entrepreneurial mindset sa kanila. Nakita din nila na, hey, this is a thing that I can do for the long run. The more I work on this, the better returns I will have for my future and my next generation's future. And I'm really glad we were able to see that.
A lot of achievements you have mentioned to us so far, but what do you think is the biggest flex or the biggest flexes of the company so far?
Mahirap for me isipin ano ba yung pwedeng ipagyabang kasi I feel like we're really just getting started. But I guess, like I mentioned a while ago, sobrang important sa akin the fact na nakita mismo ng mga magsasaka na may future yung kape nila. It's not a one-hit wonder for them. Yung parang, it's something na, they go back to every year, and every year I'd like to think that, we get better when it comes to processes, that every year also, with the exception of last year, because as we all know, it was a hard year, we've also been instituting price hikes when it comes to purchasing their coffee, and we give farmers the value of their labor for what it's worth. And they're super important in what we're doing. And I'm sure you guys also understand that farmers tend to be marginalized and on the receiving end of unfair practices. And I'm just so happy, when they see their crops, they know na, okay, may value to, and I see the value of this. Again, that's not a very tangible thing. It's not something you can really teach. But then, just the fact na nakita yung mga magsasaka, nakatrabaho namin is very important.
It's like the farmers, before the business came to them, it's like they had this simple routine na paulit-ulit lang, tanim, then mag-sell, then somebody came and gave them a bag full of hope para lang, magbago yung mindset nila and mag-iba pa yung future nila, mas lumawak pa yung future nila. Let's talk about the pandemic. We all know that the pandemic has been a very difficult time for all of us. So, what was a normal day for the Green Coffee before the pandemic started?
I guess what changed was, syempre when the pandemic set in, a lot of travel restrictions were put in place, and my father and I, especially him, we spend a lot of time with the tribe. He's there monthly, I'm there quarterly. So we haven't been there since, I think he hasn't been there since early 2020. I haven't been there since late 2019. So that's been a while. Another change that happened was Pre-pandemic, we would have a number of institutional clients. So these are clients who purchase coffee for their coffee shops, and sadly, a lot of those coffee shops really didn't make it through 2020. So we really had to focus on our retail arm, which is, I guess, in a way, one of our strengths also. Like, we set up an online store even before the pandemic. So there weren't a lot of things naman that had to be adjusted when it comes to, I guess, the business infrastructure and systems.
Mentioning the challenges that you've already faced during this pandemic, how did you resolve them?
Well, to be honest, like, the pandemic has given us losses and given us wins. But then I think what I saw really increase was the B2C part of the business, really selling directly to consumers. And again, because even before the pandemic, we already had an online store in place. It wasn't hard, I think, for customers to kind of like search coffee and then stumble upon us. We made sure that online transactions would be very easy, even pre-pandemic. We were already there, and that's what made it easy, and I would call that a win. However, one of the challenges that also arose during the pandemic, which I think is kind of a good thing na din, is, a lot of coffee brands were created. And ngayon, I think that's the challenge for 2021, is making sure that even with a lot of the quarantine brands, so-called quarantine brands that erupted from last year, the dream coffee would still be top of mind. So that's a challenge for us right now. And I think also, that's a good thing naman talaga. Competition makes you better. Hopefully, it makes you better kasi you get to see what you can offer more, what you can offer better compared to what your competitors are offering. So I think in a way, yun yung naging eye-opener din for us noong 2020 leading up to 2021 na parang for a while kasi kami yung parang new kid on the block. So medyo shiny, sikat, bago, and ngayon there's so many things that are shiny, sikat, and bago that we have to kind of play around with.
Yeah.
Well, definitely logistics. I think for anyone that was really like parang a nightmare. We really just had to stop operating. Last March, a lot of us didn't naman know what this was. There was a lot of fear, and so businesses just shut down because it was a public health issue and it was a public safety decision as well. Our beans come from Tiboli, and usually in air freight namin siya going here to Manila. And, planes were stranded and hindi sila pwede lumipad, even cargo for a while. So, it was really so difficult to get the beans from there to here. Eventually, come April, nung naging mas lax na din yung mga border restrictions, we were able to have some beans sent over. And because of that, we started operating again. But then, hindi na siya yung usual air freight. We had to ship it via sea. It landed in a different province here in Luzon. And then it took a while to get from that province to Manila for roasting. So, yun. Pero eventually naman na-solve din siya after about a month and a half. When it comes to finances, I think really it was my mother who taught me this. She's in finance, and I'm really grateful for her wisdom kasi parang lagi lang niya sinasabi sa akin is your business has to have good collection and good cash flow. And I think I kind of really took that to heart. And so when we were starting 2020, even though we had to, pay the people that we work with, pay advances just so no one really loses their income. We still had a good cash flow going because it was a structure that was already set in place even before the pandemic. Financially, I think not too much of an issue. Of course, always at the start of a year. Ngayon, mga Jan to March is always a slow month for us. So, kailangan lang mangolekta and make sure people pay. Right now, what I did, because even before the pandemic, was we would work with people on kind of like a partnership or a retainer basis. So no one is like fully employed by the Dream Coffee, but then they are still paid like a freelancer or a retainer fee. So that worked well for us because it just made things a lot more flexible. So I'm happy to say that even through the pandemic, we were still able to continue to pay, of course, the farmers and also people we work with when it comes to finance, when it comes to social media, design. Of course, our roaster partner, very crucial in our value chain. So when it comes to HR, I guess parang again it was also just important for me to kind of like make sure that people were still paid, that they still had something. And thankfully, because of I think a good cash flow naman, even pre-pandemic, we were able to continue doing that. Actually, with any business, whether you're community driven, you're always gonna be working with people, and that's hard because people are different. And so what's important to me may not be important to someone else, or they could have other things that are important to them that hindi ko din nakikita. And so I think that's really a challenge, especially when you're working with a community. Syempre, they have mindsets and cultures in place na talagang years long na yan. You can't just come in a community and say, oh, I'm gonna change how you think, diba? It's really like a long process. There's a lot of showing and not just telling. You can't just boss people around for them to do what you want them to do. Even though it's really, really always a challenge to be working with people. I think if you start it out on the right note and you're just honest about your intentions with them, they'll see that and they'll also respond accordingly.
And I think that's just good handling of business, So given these challenges and how you resolve them with solutions, I'm sure that your company has learned a lot of lessons from these challenges. So what were the lessons that the company has learned from this pandemic?
Okay, I think it's a bit cliche, but I would just say, for me, it was just important to keep going. If you guys are familiar, there's so many businesses that are really just staying afloat at this time, breaking even lang, earning, but maybe not earning as much as they used to. I think I got to a point where I was just like, giving up can't be an option. Because, this will have an end. Even if the old normal, so to speak, will settle in again in 2 years or longer than that. I'd like to think eventually there will just be more people who are comfortable with consuming more, with paying, with purchasing more items outside of their essentials, and so that will come. And parang for me, the important thing is lang, like by the time we get there, we should still be existing. So again, like I said, just keep going, just stay alive.
Yes, I think that every business is nagdadaan sa gantong phase, yung stable lang na, yes, diba? Kaya ganun, dapat patient lang and chill lang and yun nga, keep going lang talaga. With that being said, do you think that this pandemic has become a dream or a nightmare to your company, and why?
Hard to say. Parang pag nightmare kasi para talagang ang sobrang lala niya. It wasn't so bad naman for us compared to other businesses. Also because I think during the pandemic, there was really a boom in people who were brewing coffee in their house. So a lot of people got interested in the Dream Coffee who weren't trying it before. Kasi gusto nila i-brew sa bahay nila instead of like buying their coffee from a coffee shop. So I can't say that it was a nightmare. So maybe I'm leaning toward more sa dream, but not because it was an easy year, not at all. But I guess because in general, I think entrepreneurs are the kind of people who always look for opportunity in the midst of struggles and challenges.
Thank you for that. Pero how do you connect now with your customers? And how does the company make sure that they're satisfied?
Well, now all of our interactions with customers are really online. So social media has been a very good touch point for us to really get in touch with our customers. After someone purchases, we send a message to ask what they think, if they want to give us feedback. And we've been very, I guess, feedback oriented as a brand. Every time someone says, try nyo to do this, or parang we see a lot of customers asking for something, we really try to work on it. So in August, we actually launched a cold brew line just because we saw that more and more people were trying cold brew and purchasing cold brew and wanting kind of like siguro something special to drink while they're at home. So there, it's really majority online getting in touch with them.
Usually naman talaga, ganun yung ginagawa. Like, kung ano yung gusto ng customers mo, yun yung talagang dapat ibigay mo sa kanila.
Yeah.
Going back to the advocacy campaign nyo dun sa Tivoli, how does your company continue to strengthen this advocacy campaign?
I think what we're also actively trying to do now is to continue recruiting more farmers to work with. If not, getting them interested into growing coffee and the processes that we have set in place and following those processes. It's also about talking to existing farmers and making sure that they continue to plant more coffee. Kasi syempre, the more coffee they have in their lots, the more they can harvest and the more they can sell. If you guys know, the coffee usually takes 2 to 3 years to really start bearing fruit. So it's a long game. How we really continue strengthening our advocacy there is really just making sure that there are more farmers that are interested in what we're doing. And the other thing is for existing farmers to just continue planting coffee.
Oh, that's very nice to hear from you na, ayun nga, ganun yung way na para ma-strengthen nyo yung advocacy na meron kayo. So, how do you think, in other ways, does the Dream Coffee greatly impact the society, mostly the youth?
I'm not sure. Maybe the youth should answer that question. I think siguro I'll just talk in terms of what I hope it does for the youth. Like you guys, you're still in school. When you watch something like this, maybe you also get in a way inspired to have a job that someday looks like this in the future. This business is a testament na when it comes to helping out the community, you don't just need to be helping out in the sense that you're always just donating, although there's nothing wrong with that. But you can really create a business that generates profit and also contributes a livelihood to a community. And so I hope that young people will get inspired not just to create beautiful and creative brands, but really businesses that are intrinsically connected to communities and really serve communities at the grassroots. Because that's what we've also been able to do, and I'm very, very happy that we were able to do that. Yung initial plans mo in life, they don't have to be what you'll end up doing in the long run. Like, you can always just be open to new opportunities, new doors opening up for you. Because of those doors opening up and being able to say yes to certain opportunities, it landed me here, and I'm so happy for all of the things that happened para makarating ako dito.
Well, Miss Larissa, as a part of the youth, I can tell you na yan yung mga gusto namin talaga matutunan. During the course of the interview, we can see that your business is both socially responsible and at the same time profitable. So how can you tell other business to become socially responsible and at the same time profitable?
Well, the first thing really is it helps us a lot that we're directly connected to a community. So when it comes to parang stuff like traceability, sustainability, that's all easy to see on our end because, again, we're a small business. It's easy to trace all of the practices that we do with the community. And I think that contributes a lot to social responsibility because we work with a group of people na, gusto din talaga nila to work on this. Like, it's inclusive in such a way that, they have consent when it comes to working on this. They're very much all in when it comes to working on this enterprise. We want to create a socially responsible business. I think that's a great first step. Like, ikaw mismo yung I guess, maghanap and to get to know a community. So I always like to caution students and entrepreneurs na a lot of us, malaki yung heart natin for helping out people. But we always have to ask them, one, do you need help? And two, how would you like to be helped? Because that's also going to establish a good foundation for how long term you can work with them. Because from the get-go, you already made sure na meron silang voice in the situation. The other thing is really, this is the more business side of it, is really setting the right structures and systems in place, especially financially. I have to be honest with you guys, when it comes to finances, this is really, I think, as an entrepreneur, ito yung pinaka Achilles heel ko because I didn't graduate with a business degree or anything like that. And so I really just had to ask for a lot of help from friends who are more familiar with this. I had to really get familiar with stuff that are uncomfortable for me even at this point. You could be socially responsible and helping out the community. Pero kung hindi ka talaga kumikita, how will your business be a long-term thing, right? So that's very important as well. So both are equally important.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope talaga lahat ng businesses or mga youth na balak mag-start ng business na nanonood nito is i-take note itong pinaka-importanting part na to kasi yun nga, maganda kasi yung ganong klaseng business, yung social responsible and at the same time profitable. Mr. Isa, before we end this interview with the last question, I just really want to thank you again for starting this business and for this interview, for inspiring not only me, but I'm sure a lot of our viewers today. So, what will be your message for the people who want to spark a change, as well as for the businesses that just want to create an impact, but cannot yet find the perfect balance between profit and purpose?
Well, because a lot of the people I think will be watching this will be students. I really believe that. Now, you guys are the next generation of leaders, of agri businessmen, entrepreneurs, maybe even farmers. And there's something about your generation that you are just naturally inclined to justice, and I think that's incredible because then you're always going to have an eye out for people who are marginalized in communities and in countries. And so, I just want to tell siguro students who are watching this right now is play with your strengths. Like you guys, I think are really learning so much from the struggles and perhaps mistakes of the generations that came before you, and it makes you so much better than us. When I say play with your strengths, I also see a lot of students and young people now who are just naturally resourceful, naturally creative, and I think those are amazing qualities. Don't minimize the things that you're good at. Like, always try to kind of hone the natural skills that you have and work harder for the things na feeling nyo hindi kayo kasing galing at. And the last thing really would be, don't afraid to just start before you're ready. You don't need to be a graduate to ideate on a business. As early as now, you can kind of create like a vision board for how you imagine your future business to look like. As early as now, you can just have your eyes and your ears open for communities that you want to work with in the future. It can start, right now. It can start at night, pagtapos na kayo with your online classes, and you just have a notebook where you're just writing down all the ideas you have. Those are super important, and you can just keep going at it.
Thank you very much, Miss Larissa, for the compliments and the motivational pep talk. Thank you so much, Miss Larissa. And if you have anything to promote, now is the time to promote.
Okay, so if you guys got interested in the things that we were talking about, you can check out the Dream Coffee online at thedreamcoffee.ph. So I actually have a bag here, and this is what makes really our bag super striking. So it's red because it's the color also of the Tiboli tribe, and we made sure that all of the designs also reflect the tribe. So also on social media, we're at the Dream Coffee PH, both on Instagram and on Facebook. So I hope you guys will want to try it, and if you just have questions, you can just message those platforms as well.
Okay, so yun guys, let's try that. Let's try the dream coffee. So once again, thank you, Miss Larissa, for sharing us with your inspiring story as an agripreneur and for helping the Tibolis. And I'm sure that you've taught us right now to not only to dream for ourselves, but also to dream for the community. So thank you again talaga, Miss Larissa.
Thank you, Gino. Thank you, everyone.
To officially end this episode, here are some of the many key takeaways. So one is when helping a community, really get to know them, build relationships with them, and most importantly, give them a voice so that you will be able to help them in the best way possible. Second is educating the workforce is the key to an effective value chain management. So uplift their morale and make them realize their potential so that they may be empowered to better not only themselves but also their work. Lastly, an entrepreneur should be able to find opportunities amidst adversities and challenges. Even in the times of crisis, you should not cease to work towards your goals, to nurture your strengths, and to grab opportunities. Now, this may be the last episodes of Agree with the Agripreneur, but we hope that this can be the start of a very meaningful change, and that the lessons and wisdoms from our speakers were able to inspire you all. So once again, this has been Gino de los Reyes, this year's host of Agree with the Agripreneur, inspiring entrepreneurial stories you should hear. Bye! Thank you for tuning in. Now we would like to use this opportunity to thank our following sponsors. UPLB Mass, the UPLB Mathematical Sciences Society, Phil Via Ciencia, the UPLB Life Sciences Society. As an academic organization, Phil Via Ciencia, the UPLB Life Sciences Society, actively takes part in disseminating information regarding vaccination in the context of the pandemic. As the Filipinos' vaccine hesitancy reaches at its peak, the organization aims to ease the public's worries about vaccines. In the latest update of Philobay Ciencia's Vacuna Matata series, the organization researched and compared four of the leading vaccines against COVID-19. Be sure to visit their social media pages for more updated and relevant information.